live on YouTube, it says. Just taking Zoom a second to catch up. And let me start recording on my end. Record on this computer. This is Male Entrepreneur Podcast. We got Brian Brawdy on the episode today, and we are live in 3, 2. All right, welcome back to Male Entrepreneur. Start over.
Strike one.
We can do that here? We get to start over? Oh, great. I have a prepared speech. I have notes. I have everything, but we get to start over? Well, I'll just, if I could find the 3x5 cards, I'll throw them away. All right, I'm ready.
Hold on. Male Entrepreneur Podcast. We are live in 3, 2. All right, welcome back to Male Entrepreneur Podcast, the podcast for men who win, with Purdeep, Sangha, and a very special guest today. So I'm going to play a fly on the wall. I'm going to sit back and enjoy the conversation and hand it over to you, Purdeep.
I'm still trying to hold it in, man. That was an awesome intro. Love it. So thanks for the intro, Nathan. Today I'm super excited because we have Brian Brawdy back on the show here. And if you listen to Brian a number of episodes again, I can't remember exactly what episode it was, Nathan, do you? I don't know. But it was sometime last year. I believe it was last year, Brian, that you were here last. But Brian has a spot near and dear in my heart. Basically, he is an individual that, I truly, you and I really connected immediately. You're a father. You got a few more kids than I do. And you've gone through tremendous adversity. So if you haven't listened to the previous episode with Brian on it, we will put that in the show notes. I highly recommend that you listen to that episode because Brian is a phenomenal human being. And so, Brian, thanks for having us. Basically, for coming on the show, man. I can't say enough about you.
Purdeep, I've looked forward to it. And I will tell you, although my memory has some holes in it, I think the last time I was on was with you. So when I came down today, I had to learn how to put the headphones back in and put the mic on. And I'm like, well, why can't I hear myself? Well, right. I'm reminded of why I say all the time, you can't spell Brian without the I in idiot. So it took me like an hour to get ready and get all this done because I just don't remember what I'm doing. But it's great to see your face as always, brother.
Hey, thanks, man. And if you listeners out there haven't noticed, Brian is a radio guy. He can talk. He loves to talk. He's got that voice for it. We were actually just joking before, he should be one of those voice actors as well. But Brian, you know what? Last time you were on the show, that was right before you went in for your operation. So can you give, if the listeners haven't listened to your previous podcast, can you give like a quick snippet in terms of what happened at that, well, actually your journey, I guess, going into that operation?
Well, Purdeep, it's been, what now, 3.5 years all told, I guess, where I started. I went for a run. I did really good in a 15-mile run in the hills outside of Cleveland in a national park. And I went to buy a cannoli, and like a real cannoli, not like a store-bought prepackaged one, right? A real one where they make it in front of you, and there's dough, and they squirt things in, and pistachios and everything else on top, and I couldn't taste it. So I went to my doctor and said, look, for whatever it's worth, I just bought this cannoli and I couldn't taste it. And he goes, well, there's nothing wrong with you. You're a rock star, but a cannoli, really? And I go, yeah, right. So he goes, all right, why don't you come in and we'll run some tests. And I went into his office and he said, look, there's nothing wrong with you. So we're gonna have to run an MRI. I went in for an MRI and they found a golf ball sized brain tumor. So I think the last time we spoke, Purdeep, it was on the eve of my 5th brain surgery. Oh, and I brought this to share with you because again, brother, I don't remember, but this was the shunt that the brainiacs at the Chicago Cranium Shack and Needle Emporium decided to put into my head originally. So I keep it with me here to remind me. Sorry if I get it, but it was buried into my brain. This long cord ran down in my stomach, and it was an attempt to remove all the spinal fluid. But long story, after my 5th surgery, they finally found a doctor, the first one in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the first doctor in 5 that could patch me up. So the amnesia is subsided, the seizures have subsided, the tremors And I think I'm on the mend. I think I'm allowed to go places now. I no longer have an ankle bracelet on. I can drive a car. I can fly. So I think I think I'm finally out of the woods. Who knows, right, brother? The Tao follows its own path. So whatever happens, happens. But yeah, I think I'm back.
Yeah, man. And that was an emotional episode for us, probably one of the most emotional episodes, because that was before you were going into surgery. And that wasn't just a small surgery, that's a major surgery that you were going into, and not knowing, you had good chances coming out, but there's always that what if. And I think that was a big eye opener for me. And I know Nathan and I had some good conversations about this in terms of the impact that you had in terms of coming on this show to us. And I was so excited because I'm like, as soon as you're back, I want you back on the show.
Thank you.
Just not only to share your story, but also share the hope, right? Because a lot of us, on 2 points. One is sometimes we think that things are hopeless, right? And we just don't know where to look. So you can give great insight on that. But on the other side, to give a reflection of what life is really about, right? We take so many things for granted. And you have, it's not just you and your wife, you have little kids.
I have 5 all told, Purdeep. I have a 19-year-old son all the way down to a 3-year-old daughter. And I have to be honest with you, and I don't mean for this to well, I'll give you a little bit of insight. I was not scared for myself. I have a heartfelt belief that I'm bulletproof until God or the divine, whatever definition you give to the divine, I'm bulletproof till he or she decides otherwise. So there's nothing you can do to me, right? If my Kevlar gets recalled, then I'm heading home, brother, and I'll wait for you. And I hope it's a long time before I see you, right? But what scared me was I had to sit down and write the 5 notes. Of course, I wrote a note to my wife, Ashley, and I had to sit down and write letters to my 5 kids that I gave to my attorney so that if anything happened, they would at least have something, Purdeep, that they could say, oh, my dad, oh, look here, my dad wrote me this letter before he got called home, off this cruise ship of life. And that was the most challenging thing, because for me, I didn't care. If your time's up, your time's up. You don't sit in the corner and scream and cower when they call your number. But I missed my kids, and that was the most trying thing of all through the whole process.
So what's it like now? Because, you've gone through that. What's it like at home with your kids? What are your kids like?
Well, I don't think, my wife did a great job, at least for the 3 youngest ones, Purdeep. My wife did a great job of kind of sheltering them. And, she's even said, look, can you stop with the joke that you have more head scars than most Vikings? Can you please stop saying that? Because the kids all look around going, why does daddy have more head scars than most Vikings? So she did a really great job, guys, of downplaying it so that it didn't scare my kids. And because I do have more head scars than most Vikings, the kids call them ouchies. And my daughter will come up and go, would you like a boo-boo bunny for that ouchie? Or would you like this or that? So I think thanks to my wife, I think the kids did great through the whole thing.
Yeah, wow. I can't even imagine that. So so you're in radio before. What's your path now, man? Because to be honest, there was a time when you I was trying to get a hold of you. I had no idea what had happened. It kind of like I was getting worried because your Facebook, you weren't responding. And then I finally talked to Lee, who's a mutual friend of ours, and Lee said, you know what? He's doing okay. He's just kind of, off doing his own thing. So where are you at now? Are you heading back into radio? Are you doing something different?
No, we're going to head back into radio. I think we've got something coming up February 28th, which is the last, as you know, Purdeep, the last full day this year in February, because the 29th is leap year and it's a Saturday. So I think we're going to kick off 10 a.m. Eastern on the 28th with the show. And so I know that we're going to be doing that as far as the hiatus, if you will, from all things. Believe it or not, the doctors now theorize that I contracted this tumor because of, I don't want to scare everybody, right? Have all the hate mail come to me, Purdeep. Don't think yourself, but they're worried about my exposure to Wi-Fi, to the internet, because they theorized that the tumor, and you remember what it looks like, brother, it was that golf ball size, was because I was always holding my cell phone up to my head, right? Like, hey, what's going on? Yeah. Well, the tumor was the perfect circle of what would happen if you were exposed to radiation like a pebble in a pond, the way it would radiate out in a perfect circle. That's what my tumor was like. So we went through, my daughter changed all of my phones and computers so I don't see anything in color. There's no Wi-Fi in the house anymore after I lie down. There's no internet. There's no anything, because they were afraid that it was the overstimulation from all those things that might aid in my recovery. So I just quit everything. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I just quit everything. And it was the most liberating thing, not to be tied to a cell phone, not to be tied to a post button. Oh, how many people like my post on Twitter? Who cares, right? So I had, oh, well, it did get a dozen reshares. So I left it all, and I cleared 1,600 square feet of my backyard. I built a sound booth. I just basically hung close to home and didn't do anything else that anyone would be interested in. I was just a regular old guy before electricity kind of thing.
Kind of lived a life, right?
To me, it was a great life, brother. I had a blast. I was bouncing. Well, I wasn't bouncing on the trampoline given my height, but I was bouncing with my kids on the trampoline. I was, what do they call it? Chopping logs. I was, probably 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 dozen times contracted poison ivy. So I was just a mess, but I was having the time of my life. Because I just don't, me, Purdeep. Social media is one of those things that we have to do, but I have a very tight group of friends, of which I number you and Nathan among them. Other than that, I don't, I don't need a lot to get through my day, and that's what I was. That's where I was. So I apologize if you try to get a hold of me. They even took my phone away. Right? They're like, look, if you're going to recover, you can't. I guess if you're an alcoholic, they say, you're great, you're doing great, but don't go back to the bar and hang out with all your friends that do shots. And they said, since this may have been the cause of your tumor, could you just wheel it in? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, sure, I'll wheel it in. And that's where I was.
Oh, I think that's great. Yeah, I appreciate it, all for good reason. So I'm just glad that you're back, and it seems like you're doing better than ever. So you touched on a few things. What is it like? Because I don't talk to very many guys these days that have kind of shut themselves out from the world. You did it for very legitimate reasons in terms of recovering. What did that do for your family or your relationships? Did it help from that standpoint?
I think so, Purdeep, because especially for my younger ones now, they don't get iPads and iPhones, and they don't get any of these things till they graduate high school. I'll buy my kids an iPad the day they have a square cap on, right? Because you go out to places and parents are having dinner and they got 3 kids, all 3 of them on iPads. Well, I have a belief which is why I think your work is so important. I talk all the time about mortal up, and you tend to focus on the male energy, which is so important. Would it just kill us to go back to being a badass for your family, being a badass for your friends, being a badass for your community? If you got to shovel the driveway, be a badass. Oh, another thing that drives me crazy. I spent all summer with people around me. And again, all the hate mail can come to me, not to you or Nathan, but I spent all summer. Do you know they make leaf blowers now that are like diesel gas engines, where these vapid souls wear like a jet backpack full of a diesel engine, and no one rakes leaves anymore? Would it kill us to stop all the noise of these diesel-powered 400 turbojet lawn blowers and get a rake, right? Or these powered log splitters. Well, you pick up an axe, you asshat, and just, so that is it for me, right? I've gone back to my Paul Bunyan days, I guess. And so for me, I think that's the way I'm probably going to do it, because sooner or later, in our country, in both of our countries, in our world, there's going to come a time where people have to rise up and say, I've had just about enough of all this insanity. And you're not going to rise up if you spend all day on an iPad. That's all I'm saying, right?
Yeah, no, I'm totally.
That's it for me.
Man, I'm totally outside, man. We could do an entire episode on that, because I see that. I laugh at guys that are like, they have something going wrong in their house and they can't fix it, or like something like plumbing, electrical stuff like that. I understand. But if you can't put a a nail into the wall with a hammer, you got some issues there, buddy. So
well, I'll tell you this quick one. I went to a basketball game, and my wife has this rule: I'm not allowed to speak to people in public, right? Because they're like her friends and everything else, and who knows what I'll answer if you ask me a question, right? You know that. So the other day, I was at a basketball game, and my 6-year-old son, was running around, and I go, "Will you put your arms up, please? Will you make it a little tougher to get the pass around you?" And one of the moms. I won't even tell you the name of the school. I'm supposed to stop saying Bushwood because no one thinks it's funny but me. But in any event, it's this school. And one of the moms goes, "Well, we don't encourage them. We want everyone to have a good time. So we don't encourage kids putting their hands up." And my first question was, "Have you been cleared to speak to me?" My wife doesn't. It's like feeding an animal at the zoo. Am I even allowed to talk to you? And then another mom chimes in and says, "Well, we don't teach them. We want everyone to have a good experience." So now they're both in my face. I still go, arms up, arms up. And I just said to one of the moms who was a little militant "Oh, we want everyone to have a good time." I go, "When you go to chess camp, do you teach your son that you're not allowed to take the bishop? Do you teach your son to play chess, right? Or are they in the 100-meter hurdles, except you've taken away the hurdles and it's a walkway at O'Hare, right? What's happened to competition? What's happened to the human mind where, we don't want to discourage everyone, so we don't want there to be a block shot? What? So I was like, you got to be kidding me. But I guess that's a long way of saying why my wife doesn't let me speak to people in public. That's good.
she's got a muzzle on you for a reason.
Does. Right. It's like don't feed the alligators, right, at the zoo or whatever. But she does. She's like, "No, please, please, please. I gotta move in and around with these people. Stop telling people what you think." I said, "Okay, well, I'll be quiet." So now I have headphones. I got glasses. I love Audible books. As you know, I think I sent you an Audible book. I read this awesome book and I go, "Oh man, this is Purdeep, front and back." So I sent you one of the books. But yeah, I just kind of hunker down, and that way no one talks to me. Which we're all better off if no one talks to me. Who are we kidding?
That's awesome. So I'm gonna jump over to the fly on the wall over there. Nathan, do you have any questions for Brian? You've been awfully quiet this episode.
I enjoy having Brian on as a guest because he's so animated and he's just comes with so much energy.
Thank you.
I want to know what your plans are going forward. I know that you used to do you were heavy into radio and you were working on some video projects, and I just kind of want to know what's going on in the future for you.
We're going to do, Nathan, thank you for asking. We're going to do what's called the Brian Brawdy Show. And a lot of it I really learned a lot of it from Purdeep. I joked in the break that, what did I say? That I'm addicted to average, where Purdeep says he's allergic to average. I say I'm addicted to average. So I do that because with the mortal up concept that we've trademarked and we're starting to work in that regard, it's just saying to people, you don't need to be remade. You don't need a higher consciousness. I would rather people unmake themselves and go back to the original, go back to their inner badass, to quote Jen Sincero, right? To the cosmic poetry that we all are when we're born. And then you got the higher consciousness cartel, the self-help motivational industry complex, all these people that want you to be more, go above and beyond. And for me, Nathan, it's like go below and within. Above and beyond, it's just more snake oil, right? Just be yourself. You'll be a lot happier. Your family will be happier. And look at Purdeep. The world will be a lot happier if people just fell back on their genuine, authentic selves and stop buying into everybody and their brother giving you a thumbs up or a re-snap chat, whatever it is. I picked a fight the other day with Snoop Dogg, and I felt horrible about it afterwards. But so I just, like my wife says, stop talking to people in public. So that's what I'll be doing, Nathan, is mortal up going, would it kill you to just be how great you were before society got to you, right? Would it really be that detrimental for you to go back into your own center and be that person as opposed to, the 12 steps to, so that's what I'm working on. It's just suggesting to people, I think you're great already, maybe a little nuts, right? but just don't normalize the nuts in your life, and you'll be great.
Where can people find that if they want to find out more information?
Oh, nice segue into a plug. And I like how Purdeep doesn't answer the question. So there's like a little bit of removal from that, right? Like Kevin Bacon's 6 Degrees of Separation. Mortal Up, MORTAL, mortalup.com. Right? It's easier than trying to figure out how to spell Brian, but mortalup.com, and all the information and everything we're doing there, and the new radio show and some of the other things we're doing for national TV, but mortalup.com.
All right.
I love it, man.
Brian, thank you so much for coming on today. It was way too long since the last time we had you on, and just another awesome conversation. If you want to check out Brian's stuff, definitely head over to mortalup.com. If you want to get more episodes of the podcast, head on over to, where can people find the podcast, Purdeep?
Yeah, simply youtubeformen.com and mailpodcast.com.
I love that. YouTubeformen.com. I love that. I really do. And I hope you'll look at that book, because it was like 14 hours long, Purdeep. But every time I heard the author, I was like, oh, I bet Purdeep would agree. I bet Purdeep, right? It was like you wrote it and someone else voiced it over. So all the best, brother. I super appreciate all your help.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you being on the show, man. Love it.
Not at all. Thanks,
Love you,
Nathan.
man.
Great
Love
to
you.
see you as always. Love you too. All right, guys.
Man.
Bye now.
We will holler at you later. All right. I'm going to